Hey there, it's Dusty Thunder once again with another Reddit story for you. This one is, am I the astronaut for telling my wife she's wrong and that my mom is right? I, 35 male, have been married to my wife, 32 female, for 5 years, and we've been struggling financially for the past few months. I lost my job about 3 months ago, and while I found part-time work, it doesn't pay nearly as much as before. We've had to cut back on a lot of things, but it feels like no matter what we do, we're still living paycheck to paycheck and even pulling from savings. Recently, my mom, 65 female, came over to visit, and she noticed how stressed I was about the money situation. She offered some advice on how we could save money, things like cutting down on takeout, meal prepping to avoid buying groceries multiple times a week, and switching to cheaper brands. My mom has always been frugal, especially when she was raising me and my siblings on a tight budget. I thought it made sense, especially since we're really trying to save wherever we can. I asked if she was willing to go through our spending and show where we could cut down. My wife agreed with this. Okay, whoa, dude, I'm shocked right there. So right here, I thought he was going to say, I asked her if she would do this, and she started doing it, and my wife didn't know yet. That obviously would have been a red flag. Inviting mom into finances, he says wife agreed with this. I'm anxious to find out how. If this was a request made in front of his mother, that doesn't feel like a fair request to make of his wife, because then she's kind of stuck with saying yes. Let's find out. I feel like that's going to be an important piece of information moving forward, but I could be wrong. She made a whole spreadsheet about our spending, and we are spending way too much on fun stuff. We don't need Starbucks every day, and so on. It also became apparent that most of the fun spending was my wife's. To be honest, my wife didn't take the breakdown well and started arguing with my mom that her spreadsheet was wrong. She said that my mom's way of doing things is outdated and doesn't work for us. She doesn't want to give up buying organic produce, and she likes having a variety in what we can eat each week. I tried to explain that we need to make some sacrifices if we want to get out of this financial hole, but she kept insisting that things weren't as bad as I was making them out to be and that we just needed to ride it out. My mom left at this point, and we were still arguing, and she told me that she can't give up her takeout. She also went on about my mom being wrong. That's when I lost my patience and said, "You're wrong. My mom is right. She managed to raise 3 kids on one income, and we can't even cut back on groceries for a few months." My wife got really upset, saying I'm being a huge jerk for siding with my mom and that my mom is outdated. Y'all, her firmware outdated like 3 years ago. She's been due for an update, but we haven't been able to find a USB that fit her year of model. You know what I mean? So got to get her plugged in sometime soon. She's barely spoken to me since, and now I'm wondering if I went too far. By the way I see it, we need to be realistic about her situation, and my mom's advice could actually help us get back on track. I am so sorry. This is indeed an ESH. And while his wife, OP's wife, is definitely the most wrong here, I believe, OP made a fatal error. He made a fatal error in presenting his argument and using his mom in that argument. You can make this argument and be like, hey, fine, we'll pull our own data. We'll hook up the bank account to Mint or to there's lots of budgeting apps, okay? So you'd be like, okay, well, let's find something that is an up-to-date version of what we're needing and then see what that says. And if it aligns with what she says, then at least we know. Getting a second opinion here is not a bad thing. Where you screwed up, OP, was connecting the wrong to your mom being right. Those are two separate things, right? Your wife can be wrong without your mom having to be right. Those two things can live independently, but using them both at the same time created more than just your wife being wrong. It became, you are inferior to my mother in her mind. That's what she's seeing or feeling, and it is completely unnecessary. Vianney says, I don't think the wife would have been honest with her spendings if mother-in-law didn't do it. Maybe, but I think using your mother-in-law there or using your mother, OP, there also creates a distraction, right? Because then there's an emotional argument to be made about, well, you didn't have to bring your mom into this. When you say things like your mom is right and I'm wrong, that really hurts me because it's your mom. Now, if this was looking at a budgeting app and it was saying the same thing, that emotional argument does not exist. You see what I mean? So that was an unnecessary element to this. Maybe the pain of mother-in-law starting the process was needed for them to take the next step. Maybe. But, I mean, you have to, shit, we've all been there. when you're like, oh man, I need to give up my Starbucks. I need to give up my this. I need to give up my thing. That sucks. I really don't want to give it up. Everybody's been there where they don't want to give it up. And then if you've got your partner, not just your partner, but your partner and your mother-in-law pressuring you to give up the thing, all of a sudden it's 2-on-1. It's being ganged up on, and it's all her fault, right? So it's not a good look. The issue is that we've all been to the point where we're like, oh man, that sucks. I have to give this thing up. We need a little bit of time to like come to terms with the fact that like change doesn't happen in an instant. And for her to recognize, like, of course, she's going to fight to keep some of those things that she loves, but she needs time, and also needs a reasonable next step, not a next step that's like everything you like is now gone. More of, okay, this next week, can we attempt to go to Starbucks 3 times instead of 4? Small changes, right? But it's not anything that happened. What I perceived to happen here was that a big spotlight was turned on and it was pivoted to OP's wife and then intensified, and she just cooked. Be reasonable, OP. But more than anything, when you communicate with your partner, you have to try to separate those two things out. You have to separate the actual problem and any kind of emotional problems that are attached to that problem. Maybe the emotional problem is the problem, but you understand what I'm saying. Don't fight more than one fire at a time.